As Heather mentioned, we have today's webinar is being led by Carolyn Wilson, who works at the American Geosciences Institute, and she's about to tell us a little bit about what she's learned from looking at the class of 2015 from the exit survey. So take it away, Carolyn.
All right, thanks, Pranoti. For those of y'all that have seen the report, this is going to be kind of an overview of some of the data points and figures that I found most enlightening from this past year, from last year's exit survey results. For those of you that are not familiar with the with AGI's exit survey, it's for students finishing their geoscience degree in their bachelor's, master's, or doctorate. And we have it given out to graduates right at the point of graduation. So students are actually currently taking it right now. Recent graduates are taking it right now. It's open from now and through the summer to try to catch both the spring and summer graduates this year. The purpose is really to understand the educational background and some of the graduates' post-secondary experiences in their geoscience departments and what their future plans are after graduation, to kind of give us a benchmark of to then continue the investigation of the early career workforce. And it also gives departments an understanding of the preparation of students as they're exiting their program. We had two pilots in 2011 and 2012 to raise awareness and to make sure the survey instrument was viable. And then we've been running this pretty successfully for the past 3 years, with the response rate ticking up each year. And this year we had 495 bachelor's graduates, 127 master's graduates, and 70 doctoral graduates respond for the 2015 report. The cohort represents 210 different departments across the country, and here you can see the distribution of the departments as well as the relative distribution of the participants across the country. This year we did something a little different. We had some of our professional societies give out the survey as well. So I was able to pick up some students and some departments that hadn't previously participated in the exit survey, thanks to the help of some of these societies that have strong student membership. This is the distribution of the participants based on the Carnegie Classification of their institution. So I use this to kind of look at skills development and preparation based on how they're classified. And we have, a relative distribution that would make sense. A lot of participants coming from your very high and high research activity institutions, but we have a strong representation from master's colleges and from baccalaureates as well. The cohort for 2015 included 72% bachelor's, 18% master's, and 10% doctorates, which is similar to the distribution in previous years, so the percentages have stayed pretty steady. The gender breakdown has changed a little bit. Last year we had a higher male population in the master's graduates, and we had a higher female population in the doctoral graduates. And I'm sorry, that was 2014. And so for 2015, we see that as switched. With a higher female representation in the master's and higher male representation in the doctoral graduates. We asked them about their citizenship and their race and ethnicity. Majority of our students, not surprisingly, are U.S. citizens. However, the percentages of non-permanent residents does increase with graduate participation. Students that respond as U.S. citizens or permanent residents are then asked to provide their race and ethnicity. For 2015, we saw a higher percentage of students that were not willing to answer this question, so our unknown population went up a little bit. The underrepresented minorities category includes African Americans, Hispanics, Native Indians and Alaskans, and then Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. However, the majority of that percentage is a Hispanic population within the underrepresented minority category. This is the first year that we had a percentage higher than 10 for underrepresented minorities amongst bachelor's graduates. And the bachelor's and PhD percentage of underrepresented minorities has increased since last year, since 2014. For the 2015 survey, we added a question for the parent or guardian's highest education. There's been some discussion about the recruitment of students that come from more affluent families and being able to kind of figure that out, if that's an issue to be concerned about. And to look at socioeconomic status, we thought that parent education would be a good indicator of that student's potential socioeconomic status, with a higher SES with a higher education degree. And as we see, we have very strong, very high percentages of at least one parent having a graduate or professional degree for our graduates that finished with a master's or a doctorate. This also shows you the percentage of students that are first generation college students. Because with bachelor's graduates, 12% indicated that their parents didn't have any college experience. For master's graduates, 10% indicated their parents had no college experience, and for doctoral graduates, 13% indicated that neither of their parents had any college experience. So we'll continue to track that one in future surveys. As you can see, particularly at the bachelor's level, our students have very wide interest in fields within the geosciences, and it also shows you the breadth of what AGI considers the geosciences as well. And then students tend to specialize into different fields as they go into their graduate degree. So you notice geochemistry, geophysics, marine sciences, paleontology, and hydrology all increase quite a bit in their representation of master's and doctoral graduates compared to bachelor's graduates. Many of those geology students start specializing in different areas. We asked the students when they decided to major in the geosciences, and for bachelor's graduates, about 50% told us that they decided during their first and second undergrad years. 42% of master's graduates told us their first and second undergrad year, and 34% of doctorates told us actually after their undergraduate degree is when they decided to major in a geoscience field. Those were the highest percentages of graduates for those categories. When asking about their educational background, over the past 3 years, consistently we've seen about half of the graduates saying that they have taken an earth science or environmental science course while in high school. The percentages shift a little bit from year to year, but it's about half. So it indicates that they're already interested in the subject, whether or not they actually decided to major in the subject, which lends to them taking that intro course during their first or second undergraduate year, and then making that choice. It also shows that they have a comfort with the subject area. For students that attended a two-year college for at least one semester, this percentage for bachelor's graduates has consistently increased since we started the survey, from about a quarter of our bachelor's graduates attending a two-year college for at least a semester to now up to a third of our bachelor's graduates spending at least a semester at a community college. And we've also seen increases at the master's and doctorate level too, and the indication is that those increases will continue over time. I mean, it just really shows the viability and the necessity of the two-year college as an option for students to begin their post-secondary education, or to maybe take some time, take a semester off and take a couple of courses that need to be taken. This continually lends support to the need for more collaboration and agreements between the institutions to help ease the students' transition from a two-year college to a four-year college. When we ask the students what courses they've taken, what quantitative courses they've taken during their post-secondary education. So this question covers any time during post-secondary education if they've taken one of these courses. And majority of our bachelor's graduates end up taking Calculus 1 and Calculus 2 and tend to stop there. Our graduate students will go all the way up to Calculus 3, but you see the master's graduates drop down quite a bit after Calculus 3, and the doctoral graduates are somewhat sustaining across, although there is a dip in the percentage of doctoral graduates that take the higher level quantitative skills. We've had some discussion in industry about the need to encourage students while they're working towards their degree at all levels to have high quantitative ability. So we would like to see these percentages go up. We do know that it's not a gender issue from our graduates. It's pretty relatively even between the male and female populations on taking these courses. However, the availability of the higher quantitative courses are dependent on the institution that they go to. So our institutions that are identified as very high or high research institutions by their Carnegie Classification tend to have these higher level quantitative courses available for students to take, whereas that may not necessarily be the case for the liberal arts colleges or the master's colleges. We then go through a series of questions asking the graduates about their field experiences, their research experiences, and their internships. And so I'll go through each of those in these next few slides. We offer the distinction of 3 different types of field experiences. Field camp, which is a summer course, 4 to 6 weeks with intensive skills development and mapping in the field. A field course where half of the course time is spent in the field developing field skills, and then a field experience where it doesn't fit into either of those categories, usually like a field trip or a short course that doesn't match either of those definitions. Only 2% of the total population of graduates indicated not having a field experience. Nearly all of our students have some sort of field experience. So I throw up the graph on students that have participated in field camp because this comes up in a lot of discussions on the availability of field camp across the country and for students that would like to take field camp while they're working towards their degree. And as you can see, there is a percentage of students that would like to take it but haven't yet had the chance to, maybe still planning to over the summertime. I know some students, some recent graduates are at field camp right now, so they may have answered not yet and are attending at this moment. And then we have percentages of students that have not yet participated in a field camp and may or may not intend to. And it does depend on the institution. So while all institutions have the ability for a field experience, field camps tend, the availability of field camp can depend on the type of institution. With your liberal arts colleges and your master's colleges maybe not having the same field camp availability as your doctoral institutions. AGI is beginning to track where field camps are available at what institutions across the country through our Directory of Geoscience departments so that we have a better understanding of the distribution of field camps and if the attendance at these field camps are open to students outside of the department or not. But data that we get from Penny Morton at University of Minnesota is showing us that we think a lot of field camps are at capacity and are having trouble accepting all the students that are interested in taking a field camp course. We asked a series of questions about research experiences, and the survey indicates two different types, if it's faculty directed or an individual research project. So across the board, about a quarter of our bachelor's graduates say they do not participate in any sort of research experience, either with faculty or on their own. But nearly all of our master's and doctoral graduates have some sort of research experience, which is expected. There's been a lot of conversation along with field experiences, also with research experiences, on the skills development that comes from these opportunities and how they prepare students for their profession. And actually, students that participate in a field experience, or I'm sorry, in a research experience, they all feel these research experiences are very important to their academic and professional development. This graph looks a little busy. I separated out the research methods that students indicated using in individual research by their degree fields. There's a lot going on, but I think what you can clearly see is undergraduate students that are doing individual research, it tends to be field-based and lab-based. And graduate students do multiple different methods, but computer-based is really becoming important for graduate students as they're doing their individual research. And that would make sense. Computational modeling and coding have become very important to geoscience research in recent years. If you spend time with this graph, you can see where these different methods are more often used in what field. When we ask about internships, consistently over the years, we see high percentage of students saying, no, I did not participate in an internship while I was working towards my degree. And I found that, I in particular found this kind of concerning, because as many of you know, an internship is incredibly valuable for developing the professional skills that are necessary for entering the workforce. It also helps you create new networks, and it just gives you an idea of what work is like on a day-to-day basis in an office in a geoscience field. And a lot of discussions that we have with industry representatives focus a lot on the need for better preparation and professional skills, communications, writing, being able to work in groups, many of these kind of things. And internships are a great way to develop that. So we wanted to ask some further questions about if they're applying for them and where they're finding the resources they use to find these internships. When we asked them if they're actually applying, largely they're not. Many of those students that did not have an internship are also not necessarily applying for them. I think our master's graduates very clearly understand the need for having an internship at some point during their, while they're working towards their degree. But I'm not sure that it's as clear amongst the benefits of an internship is as clear for bachelor's graduates and for doctoral graduates. I don't really know exactly why we have these higher percentages of students not applying for internships. That's a further investigation, but I think it's something to take into consideration. When we ask them for the resources they use to find internship announcements, master's graduates are using all the resources that they can at their disposal. But you can see that in particular, faculty referrals and internet searches are very useful for students to find those internships. Faculty referrals will come into play a little bit later too. The faculty have a huge influence on the preparation of students outside of just curriculum and skills development in the lab, and I think it's important to take note of that. So the third section of the survey is really about their future plans. Are they planning to go to graduate school? Are they looking for a job in the geosciences? Have they found a job in the geosciences, etc.? So in 2015, 38% of bachelor's graduates and 20% of master's graduates indicated that they wanted to go back to school for a graduate degree immediately. This was their immediate plan. These percentages are actually down from what we saw in 2014. In 2014, 42% of bachelor's graduates and 26% of master's graduates indicated their plans to attend graduate school in the fall. And over the years, AGI has been tracking enrollments in departments. And when you look particularly at the enrollments in graduate departments, over the years it started to flatten out some. And it's indicating that departments are at capacity. We've actually been hearing this from departments as well, that they're having a hard time accepting accepting all of the quality students that are applying for the program. And I think this might be something that students are hearing as well, that it's hard to get into graduate school right now. So again, something to keep in mind. But for those students that do plan on attending graduate school, we see their possible graduate degree, their degree they're planning on getting, and their possible field of study. I think it's important to note that the bachelor's graduates interested in a graduate degree, there's a lot of different fields they're interested in. Some of them aren't even geoscience. We have some interest in biological sciences, in law, in business, in medical school. So our students are starting to branch out a little bit and kind of investigate what they want to be doing for their career, which is what they should be doing for their graduate degree. For those students that are looking for employment in the geosciences, in 2015, 10% of bachelor's graduates, 40% of master's graduates, and 59% of doctoral graduates said that they had found employment in the geosciences. And I want to stress that this is at the time of graduation. So these numbers, these percentages, you would expect them to increase a few months out, even a year out from graduation. But these are students that were able to secure employment at the point of graduation. As far as those that are still seeking work in the geosciences, we see 51% of bachelor's graduates, 40% of master's graduates, and 39% of doctoral graduates. They're still seeking work, and hopefully will find a job, and hopefully did find a job within the months after graduation. So for those students that those graduates that did find a job in the geosciences, these are the industries that hired these students. So for the first time in the 3 years that we've run the exit survey and put out the reports, oil and gas is not the dominant industry in hiring bachelor's graduates. Environmental services increased by 15% from 2014, and made up 40% of the hiring of the bachelor's graduates that had found a job. We also saw a decrease in the percentage of doctoral graduates that went to work for the oil and gas industry, from 26% in 2014 to 15% in 2015. However, the master's graduates in the oil and gas industry increased from 59% in 2014 to 67% in 2015. There's been a lot of discussion with the oil and gas industry in particular about concerns with hiring and with layoffs and economic changes. What we're seeing particularly at the master's level is that they're still hiring right out of school. They're still hiring fresh and new graduates. I think the larger concern when it comes to that industry, and this is what we're hearing from industry representatives, it's people that have been in the profession for 3 to 5 years or are close to retirement that have been experiencing some of the layoffs in recent months. What was interesting amongst the industries this year was this was the first year that the nonprofit industry appeared as an industry hiring right out of school. I point that out because I work in a nonprofit, but I also think it's kind of interesting that we're seeing some shifts and changes in the industry representation of hiring right out of school. Also, I do want to point out that that we saw 4% hiring in mining or master's graduates. I don't think I get enough graduates from graduates with an interest to go into the mining industry, because what we're hearing is that mining is actually very robust right now in their overall in the industry and in their hiring. So there are some areas, I point this out because there are some areas where I would like to see growth in the makeup of the participants that take this survey, and hopefully that will happen over time. Here you see the distribution of starting salaries for these graduates that accepted a job, and there's some clear salary ranges depending on your degree. Master's graduates tended to make $30,000 or less, all the way up to $50,000, $60,000 for their starting salary. Master's graduates are across the board, but you really see it between $50,000 and $110,000. And then doctoral graduates, you see it from about $40,000 to $70,000. Everyone on here that reported making more than $90,000 a year as a starting salary is working for the oil and gas industry. Last year we had slightly higher percentages, above 100K, but I think this is showing that the oil and gas industry is, because of some of the economic issues, lowering some of these starting salaries for new hires. We asked students what resources they use to find these jobs. Master's students overwhelmingly use these campus recruiting events and the job fairs that are set up. A lot of times universities have geoscience specific job fairs, and these are very helpful for the master's graduates. Bachelor's graduates tend to rely on personal contacts and faculty referrals. So we're coming back around to faculty referrals and the importance of the faculty influence on graduates as they move on after graduation into the workforce. PhDs also tend to rely on personal contacts. I'm wondering if there's a blurring between personal and professional contacts. So you meet someone through a faculty advisor or through conferencing in a network, and they become a personal contact. I think the personal contacts category kind of blurs amongst some of the other categories, that potentially blurs amongst a couple of the other categories. I think it's also important to note that there's very little help from the college and university career centers. There's been some discussion that these are areas within the university that should be helping our students, but maybe they need some help from the departments to identify jobs that are more appropriate for geoscience graduates, or just a little bit more collaboration within the university to make these career centers better if we're going to encourage them as useful for students. This is the general distribution of where these students found jobs. As in previous years, Texas and California tend to be the states that hire the most graduates, but you can see students found jobs across the country. But I point this out because it shows that students are willing to move. They find a job, and if you remember the participation map that I showed at the beginning, we had a lot of departments on the East Coast that participated in, particularly Pennsylvania and New York, and students that are finding jobs are willing to move to other states and move to these jobs. I think that's an important point. Also, 9 graduates found jobs in international locations. So this figure shows data for the past 3 years, and this is everyone that has found a job, that has indicated they found a job, and it shows their degree field and then the industry where they found their job. And as we collect more data, the better this graph becomes. This graph becomes better and more accurate with more information and more data from the survey, but it's very telling on the industries of interest for students within these degree fields. So as I said, the survey has been running for 3 years. We want this to be a continual yearly thing. This is programmatic for AGI. This is not a one-off project. You can find the previous reports and the 2015 report at the website listed there on on AGI's website. All the reports are free PDFs. If you haven't downloaded and looked at them, I encourage you to look at the past 3 years. As I said earlier, I'm currently collecting data for this year. I'm actually running a little low on responses. So if you're a faculty member, I'm going to give you a link and a code that you can distribute to your graduates. Encourage them to take the survey. You can also get in contact with me about it. Moving forward, the exit survey has already gone international. We've collaborated with Canada and the UK and have contacts in both of those countries. We collected data last year. We're currently collecting data this spring from graduates from both of those countries. And I have contacts in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. So those are the countries that will be the next steps. But we're just looking to expand as much as possible to really get a good benchmark of the geoscience graduates across globally, across the world, and then begin to really investigate the early career workforce. So a longitudinal survey has been piloted, and edits are in the process of being made, and it will go out late summer, early fall to all the students or all the recent graduates that have taken the exit survey and have allowed me to contact them again in the future. Like I said, I need your help. To distribute this survey, I have department contacts that give it out to their graduates and society contacts that give it out to their that send it out to their student membership. I don't have direct contact with the graduates myself, and I think it's better this way. The graduates don't really care what comes from someone they don't know. They care about information and requests that come from faculty members and staff in the department that they recognize and they know, or from the societies that they have a relationship with. They may or may not pay dues to, but they go to conferences and participate in local chapters. So it's really important that I have willing advocates, departments, and societies to help send this out to their graduates. To encourage participation, I give the data back in aggregate to the departments and to the societies. And you also get a chance to get contact info for your graduates, which is really major, particularly for your undergraduates. You may not end up with an email address for your graduates, and then that information goes to the alumni office, and you may never get access to it. So this gives you an opportunity to maybe be able to contact your alumni in the future and have them maybe talk to current students, or just be able to have their contact info. So here's a survey link. It's a bit.ly, and the bit.ly is AGI exit survey. And it asks for a token code, so I provided you one. And there's also my email address if you have any further questions or need anything related to the exit survey from me. And with that, I am open for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for your wonderful presentation. We do have several questions come in from the audience. The first one is asking about community college and two-year schools. Do you plan to survey AA or AS degrees in the community colleges in the future?
That's a really good question and a hard one to answer. Any of you that are connected with two-year colleges, it can be really hard to track students in geoscience with geoscience interests or have taken geoscience courses. I would like to. I think I need to investigate which programs have an associate's degree for geosciences. I think I have a pretty up-to-date list, but I need to double check that and really talk with some community college faculty on the best way to be in contact with these students. But it's something that we would like to do, yes.
Excellent. Thank you for that. In one of your previous slides, you alluded to an increased minority participation among some of the undergraduates. Do you know, are these from a particular region, for example, Texas, California, or Florida, for the Hispanic population? What do you think?
I haven't matched the racial responses to location, but considering the participation map And the relative distribution of our respondents, I would imagine quite a few of the Hispanic population does come from California and Texas, because that's where we also have the highest numbers of respondents. It's also where you have the highest rates of graduation for geoscience departments.
Yeah, absolutely. We have one audience member who is interested about how you notice the trends over the last few years of your surveys, and he was wondering if you'll be releasing some of those longitudinal analyses as the AGI currents. And specifically, they're interested in some of the diversity data. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I am always looking for suggestions on currents, things that y'all want to see, and data that you would like referenced. I do plan on doing longitudinal reports. I was hoping to get 4 or 5 years worth of data and then look across the board, across the years, what trends we're seeing. And so that is on the plan for the future. But I will look into the past 3 years, particularly with the racial data, and see and diversity data, and see what I can put out there for our currents. I think that's a good idea.
Another question came in, and it's about the figure that you had, the large career wheel, and we had a participant ask if you would be able to provide that as a PDF or something so they could print it out in their department and put it up in the hallway as a large poster. Would that be available?
So actually the 2014 version of this wheel, so it's just 2 years worth of data, is a currents that can be printed out and a PDF available at this moment. I was planning to update that currents this summer with this wheel, so we have the most up-to-date wheel. So it will be in a PDF version, and I will get that up there as soon as I can.
Going back to the discussion with community colleges, we have a question about whether or not you've seen your master's and PhD students going into jobs at community colleges. Have you seen any trends like that, or are you even looking at that?
I think 2 years is an option as an industry, and I mean, if you're looking at the wheel, it's not represented yet. So our graduates, if they are going into 2-year institutions after finishing a master's or a doctoral degree for a job, it's not at the point of graduation. It might be a little bit after. And I think that's an important note to remind yourself as you look at this data, is that this is at the point of graduation. And as I said earlier, I think the percentages and distribution in some of these industries would very likely change a few months out from graduation, which is why we need to and plan to follow up with the early career workforce and see what their career pathway has looked like so far since graduation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, will some of the questions be different for international participants? And if so, what kinds of questions will you be asking them?
So that's a good question. That's one of the reasons why I have to find an initial contact in each of these countries, because the first thing we do is I pass them my survey that I give to U.S. students, and then they go through and revise it and make it so that it responds to the students in their country, because the educational programs are a little bit different. Emphases are on different things. For example, with the UK, obviously they have different racial and ethnic categories, so that gets incorporated. They also have different education pathways and coursework that move into their degree plan. So some of the quantitative skills questions and other early skills development, education background questions, those got changed quite a bit. I think for both the UK and Canada, there were slight changes to field experiences. The UK has a very strong emphasis on a mapping project that all of their graduates are expected to do. So there's variances in some of the questions. However, the overall ideas are still there. So with each new country, it's identifying someone that can work with me to translate the survey so it makes sense for their graduates, but to keep the overall ideas of a look into their demographics, educational background, some of these skills developments that are very important in the geosciences, and then their future plans after graduation.
Excellent. We have a question specifically about the oil and gas section of this graph. Do jobs in the renewable energy industry fall under this oil and gas category?
They don't. Oil and gas industry is very specific. I think when you talk about renewable energy, that's going to fall more under the environmental side. But these, I think it's also important to stress that these are categories developed by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. I need to review their, I need to just double check their categories for oil and gas, but renewables don't, I don't think renewables fall under that, and these are categories that that they've created and have had to kind of fix over time to go with what our current workforce looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question about service learning. With service learning and civic engagement playing a larger role at the universities and them really making their way into the geoscience courses, will you add some questions in the future around the theme of service learning courses and their impacts?
I think that's a good idea to investigate. I need to think about it. The survey is pretty long as it is. There's a lot of questions to be asked. And from what I could tell from, I think we would have to have a very clear definition of service learning that is understandable and universal across the departments. I think when the National Academies had their service learning in the Geosciences meeting last month, there were different ideas, there were slightly different ideas of what service learning looked like within the department. So I think a little bit more definition on service learning could be useful. But again, I stress it's a long survey.
Right now, those are all the questions that we have from the audience. Oh, here's another question that just came in. How many questions are there on the survey? Do you remember? I think it might change.
It's changed a bit. There's over 100 questions. Now, and there's also different numbers for different departments, because some departments have given us questions they only want their students to answer. So some students get a few more questions than the majority of students, but there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, certainly 100 questions is definitely a lot of questions. Now, what incentives do you give for students to participate in this survey, or do departments give any incentives, or how do you do that?
So right now, incentives are kind of up to departments because I don't have any funding to really provide incentives through our office. Maybe in the future that can change, but I know that some departments will convene lunch gatherings of students like the last week of school and give them pizza, and if they just sit down and take the survey, or sometimes they just have meetings and stress the importance of the survey. I don't know of anything beyond like free food that has been handed out by departments. I would love to throw in incentives if I could, and so maybe someday in the future.
Absolutely. Who doesn't like free food? There's a question about back to the two-year colleges. Do you want any graduates from two-year colleges to fill out the survey this year? What do you think about that?
I think it's geared towards graduates from four-year institutions. I can show you the survey instrument, and if you have two-year graduates, and you can let me know what you think. But it might go a bit beyond the two-year college experience. I'm not certain.
So for that participant who had that question, feel free to shoot Carolyn an email about that to follow up, and then you guys can discuss a path forward.